Hello, good evening, and welcome to WoWFEST Lockdown and tonight's event, An Evening with Rosie Jones. Before I introduce Rosie, I'd like to just talk about a few things. First of all, like our page to get notified for when our next festival event is, and general WoW news. WoWFest Lockdown, if you didn't know, is our online literature festival from the 7th to the 31st of May, and we're streaming all our events online on Facebook for free. Donations are being accepted and will be split towards fans supporting food banks, South Liverpool domestic abuse services, and WOW. We've already had the likes of Irvin Welsh and Noam Chomsky, and to look at future events, on Monday the 25th of May, we have Building a Better World, Arts and Civic Responsibility, with renowned theatre critic Lynn Gardner, Director of Culture Liverpool Claire McColgan, and WOW's own co-director Madeline Hennigan, to explore issues and the role that can be played by arts organisations now and in the future. On the 29th of May, we'll have Raul Martinez and Francesca Martinez questioning the status quo. And on the 31st of May, we'll have Jeremy Corbyn doing a keynote speech, A Call to Art, which talks about the importance of arts and culture during this difficult time. And afterwards, we'll have Levi Tafari doing an incredible spoken word set. By all means, that's not all the events we have on, so please check out the rest of the lineup on wowfest.uk. Over the last few years, we've curated a strand of events about women and the TV and film industry and the specific challenges they face when they're trying to break through them. Female performers only account to 10% of the comedy industry, according to The Independent, and panel shows are more likely to have men as regulars or team captains rather than women. So even when you've got enough of an audience to be on TV, you still have to fight to be the one making the joke and not end up being the punchline. So who is Rosie Jones? Rosie Jones is a fantastic comedian. She's gone on to star at Live at the Apollo, The Jonathan Ross Show, 8 out of 10 Cats, The Last Leg, Joe Lycett's Got Your Back, and a whole host of other shows. Not forgetting her comedy writing roots, Rosie is also busy writing on a couple of sitcoms, and she's written on the hit Netflix series Sex Education. She also hosts the podcast Daddy Look at Me Now with Helen Bauer. If you have any questions for Rosie, feel free to comment below and we'll pick it up in the Q&A afterwards. But without further ado, here to tell us more about the trials and tribulations of getting yourself into the comedy industry is Rosie Jones.
Hello everyone. What a lovely introduction. So I'm Rosie, so as Yorkshire speakers, this is how I talk. At any point you think to yourself, no, I got no bloody idea what she just said. Just assume it's funny. Thank you. So like Alex said, I'm a writer, comedian, actor. Well, I used to be. Now in isolation, I'm a full-time cake eater. And I tell you this, I'm pretty good at it. So, before I talk about comedy, I want to take you back like nearly 30 years. And when I was little, growing up in the 90s, I was really lucky because I got a brilliant mum and dad. And they taught me to be whoever I wanted to be, apart from a hairdresser or an optician or a brain surgeon or a train announcer. The train coming into platform 4 is the 1422 to, it's already gone. But luckily, deep down, I knew what I wanted to be. When all my friends wanted to be princesses or astronauts, I wanted to be a writer. Ever since I was 4 years old, that's something I could do because I forgot cerebral palsy, so I couldn't really walk or run, but I could read and write. And when I was an itty bitty little girl, I would inhale books all day, every day. And that stayed with me all my life. But another passion of mine has been TV. I love it. When I think about Saturday nights when I was little, it was all about Superman, Blind Date, Gladiators, and as I grew older, comedy caught my heart, my soul. Mainly amazing comedy writers like Carolina Hearn, the Royal Family, Victoria Wood and Dinner Ladies. Those were the shows I watched, and those were the people I looked up to. Also, French and Saunders, I can't forget them. Amazing comedians. But although I loved telly, something that upset me was I never saw someone who was disabled and a woman and gay. I could never turn on the TV and see someone that I could look up to. Well, if ever there was a disabled person on the show, they would be the victim, and something that I am not is a victim. And as I grew older, that made me sad, and then slowly it made me very angry. But for me, getting angry is a good thing because when I get angry, I start to change things, and I started to think, instead of why isn't there any disabled people on TV, I thought, right, I'm gonna change that. So I had a plan, and I went to uni and studied English, and after uni I was lucky enough to get the first job I applied for. That never happens. And I got a job working at Channel 4 behind the camera. And I loved it because for the first time in my life, I could see what happens backstage. And it was my dream to change TV, in particular comedy. And I really started out working on panel shows like 8 out of 10 Cats, Would I Lie to You, and The Last Leg. And I really enjoyed it. But even then, in 2012, there was still a severe lack of diverse voices in the media and in terms of comedy. And before I carry on, I want to say 2012 was a real turning point in terms of disability, because that was the year of the London Paralympics, and Channel 4 really had that amazing slogan of Meet the Superhumans. And for the first time, the general public could see disabled people as being more than victims. They were people that you could aspire to, and being disabled didn't feel like a disadvantage, because these Paralympians were kick-ass, amazing people. So I want to say, in terms of the media and changing people's perceptions, that was a huge turning point. So, anyway, back to me, the interesting thing. So in 2012, I was still working behind the camera, and although things were changing slowly, on the panel shows I was working on, I still saw a severe lack of diverse voices. Even Alex was saying, even women were few and far between. And I really wanted to change that. So I started writing more, going back to my first love of being a writer. And I wrote jokes for Jimmy Carr, which was amazing. And just watching him say my jokes was out of this world. But I had a cheeky voice inside my head. And that cheeky voice said, he's telling your jokes. He shouldn't be telling your jokes. You should be telling your jokes. Because Jimmy is still a white, straight, able-bodied man. It didn't matter that what he was saying was being written by a gay disabled northern lady. Like, I feel that even, and by then we're talking 2016, even in 2016, no one was telling my story, and I still felt like that little girl watching on a Saturday night in the 90s. So I thought, no one will tell your story apart from you. And I've always been a person to take the bull by the horns, and I thought I won't know either way unless I try it out once. I love my job. I got great friends, an amazing family. If I do one comedy gig and I spectacularly fail, that is okay, because at least I know that the comedy stage is not for me. So I gave it a go, and this was 3 years ago now. It was in a dingy basement in Dalston. It was horrible. I did my gig to 8 people, and I think I told 2 jokes, and I loved it. I fell in love straight away. There was a fire inside of me that thought, I need to do this more. I was hungry for comedy. And since then, it's been amazing. I'm so lucky because I'm not just a comedian, I'm also an actor. And I was so lucky 2 years ago to star in Silent Witness. that was not a comedy role. But for the first time on any drama, 3 of the lead characters were disabled, and stats like that are shocking. Like, why is it taking us so long to properly represent disabled people? But I'm always an optimist, and I really feel like we're going in the right direction. And in terms of my stand-up career, I mean, it's all been a dream come true. I performed at Wembley, the Royal Albert Hall, Apollo, doing live at the Apollo. I bloody couldn't believe it. And I'm lucky enough to now go on stage and talk about my disability, but only some of the time. We're now in a position where, sure, I'm disabled, okay, I talk a bit funny, but that isn't all of me. I'm a human being. I'm flawed. I'm not an angel. I do talk about sex and mistakes, and we're at a point where disability isn't this taboo subject. It's something that can be discussed, and if it's a good joke, you can bloody laugh at it. And in terms of panel shows, again, like acting, we're not there yet. Women, disabled people, people of colour, they're not represented as much as they should. But we're getting there. I'm a regular on panel shows, and luckily on most shows now, in terms of gender, it's 50-50, and I'm now in a position where on panel shows I don't always need to tell the disabled jokes. I can just be Rosie, which is great. I'm finally writing my first love. I'm in a position where I write on sitcoms. I wrote an episode for Sex Education, which was incredible and a dream come true, because I wrote for Gillian Anderson, and as a closeted gay girl growing up in the 90s, I tell you what, that was a dream come true. And I'm in a position where I'm starting to write my own story in sitcom form, and hopefully soon I'll have shows on TV that small disabled people who they're not sure who they are or who they want to be, they can then turn on the TV, see me or see someone diverse or different, and they'll be able to see themselves and see that their life, their future might be different, and it might be hard at times, but it won't mean it won't be good. They will have a great life. I remember when I was 6 years old, I wrote an essay about what I wanted to be when I was older. And I said I wanted to be a children's writer. And 25 years later, I'm living that dream. And I'm currently writing my first children's book, which is like a dream come true. And that's because I want young disabled people and young people in general to pick up my book and realise that there are different people in the world, but that doesn't make the story something we should ignore. We should be celebrated. So yeah, I think that's it. I'm sorry if I waffled, but that is my story. Yeah. I don't know why I'm clapping myself.
Rosie, thank you so much. That was absolutely brilliant. I'm sure that's inspired a lot of people watching tonight. Just a reminder, we've had a few questions for the audience, but if you want to ask, please do in the comments and we'll ask your questions to Rosie. So I guess the first question is, so someone's written here, I'm a disabled writer and want to make writing a freelance job. I sometimes worry about people not taking my ability seriously. Do you have any advice to push through that?
Well, I'm not gonna lie, it can be difficult, and especially when I worked in TV, when I was looking for jobs, I had instances where people would ring me up, hear my voice, and put their phone down, and like it's almost laughable how shocking that is. But it's getting better, and in terms of making it as a writer, disabled or not, it's bloody hard. And I touched on it slightly, but I did have a few years where I had to keep my job in TV and then write and perform in the evenings, and that is so hard. I think I lived on about 4 hours sleep.
Wow.
For the whole year, and I think it's especially hard as a disabled person. So there isn't a shortcut to it, but what I say is keep writing every day. There's so many good submissions and competitions, and if they want to write for TV, the BBC Writers Room is incredible to get your foot in the door. But I wish I could say it's easy, but it's not. Just write about what you know and never be ashamed to write your story.
I think that's wonderful advice. Are you reading lots? What or who are your current favourites?
I am reading, and actually, secretly, I'm loving the lockdown because usually I'm here, there, and everywhere performing and writing, and I don't get time to read. But I am reading in lockdown, and it sounds boring, but I love autobiographies of comedians. So I've read Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Super Brand, all my heroes. But I'm currently reading Billy Connolly's autobiography because he's my hero, like, mainly because nobody swears quite like him, and because of his illness, he's decided to write down all of his most famous comedy routines, and he put them in a book. And honestly, I mean, you know this, but a great writer, you can hear their voice when you read it, and that's just what this book is. You're reading it and you got Billy Connolly in your ear. It's amazing.
Yeah. So how do you harness that aggression when you're faced with discrimination? How do you turn it into a moment to change their views?
It's tricky. I won't lie, there has been points where I've had to scream into a pillow. But luckily, and I think it's a combination of magic genes, but I take after my dad, and he's very calm and cool, and what I find lucky is I've been disabled since birth. It was a complication at birth. So I've never known any different. People say to me, "You're not disabled, you're Rosie." So for me, I do get annoyed and frustrated, but there's nothing I could have ever done to stop me being me. So I like to think about the future, and I'm an optimist, and I like to think, right, things aren't ideal right now. Unfortunately, still in 2020, I can walk down the street on my own and get laughed at or shouted at. But that doesn't upset me or make me angry. I'm not angry at the usually young boys who are shouting at me. I'm just, I put whatever I feel into my work, and I think, right, why are they shouting at me? Why are they laughing at me? It's because they haven't been educated. It's because they haven't seen people like me in books or in living rooms. So being angry for me has never made me feel better. What makes me feel better is thinking about the future and what I can do to stop the people shouting at me and shouting at other diverse people.
Yeah, I think I mean a question that I've wanted to ask you is I mean we can't get away from this subject about COVID-19 and how it has affected the disabled community. It's I mean from your perspective, what have you seen?
Well, I'm lucky in terms of my disability. I have always been independent. I left home at 18 and I've lived away for 12 years. But even me, when COVID hit, I thought, I can't live on my own. Little things that people don't think about is I have mobility issues when I'm out and about. To keep steady, I touch everything. So right now, I can't go to shops or supermarkets because that is simply not safe for me. And as a proud woman, it pains me that right now I've had to move back up north to live with my mum and dad because I simply can't cope. And I think there's a lot of disabled people in the same boat, and I feel that this isn't the right night to go up on one about the government, but let's just say I am not a fan, and I don't really know what they're doing for disabled people right now, and that is scary.
That's I think that's a worry for absolutely everyone. And you know, your speech has inspired people already. And you know, it's you once said in an interview, and you mentioned it in your speech as well, about that you struggled growing up being disabled and gay as well. And I just wanted to ask, in terms of representation, are we seeing some glimmers of hope now, or do you think there's always got to be work to be done?
I mean, I would love it one day if we sit back and we go, we're doing it. We're representing everyone. But unfortunately, I don't think that it will happen next year. It's an ongoing process. But what I do think is we're certainly going in the right direction. And I know from my time working behind the camera that producers are aware of it, and they really actively seek out new and diverse voices, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's a knock-on effect, and there's so many brilliant, diverse comedians and actors, but we need to wait for pretty much a generation, because the more and more diverse people on TV will now be seen by young, diverse people who hopefully now will grow up into a world where they go, I want to be a comedian because I saw Rosie on TV. So we're not there yet, and I don't think we're a year away or even 5 years away. But we're going in the right direction, and I hope my dream, and I hope this isn't too far away. My dream is that a producer will book comedians for a panel show and accidentally book all women, and it not even be a thing. It then billed as a all women special. It's just something that's happened, and I feel that could be in the near future.
I just wanted to go back on your experience writing for the TV show Sex Education. What was your favourite part of writing for the show, and do you have a favourite line?
Oh, it was amazing. So I worked on series 2, but we wrote it when series 1 wasn't out yet.
Oh, wow.
So I had read all the scripts and obviously really enjoyed it. But when we were writing series 2 in the room, we had no idea how big it was gonna be. So that was my favourite bit. It was a day after it had been released. I think we all came into the writers' room and we were like, shit, come we knew we were right in the second series of a hit that was bigger than any of us could have ever imagined. And favourite line, so I wrote episode 4, and the theme of that week was asexuality, and that really spoke to me because my really good friend is asexual, and she has spoken like me about not being seen in the media and feeling like in some way her not being attracted to people made her in some way broken. So I think my favourite line was a moment between the character and Jean, played by Gillian Anderson, my girlfriend, where the girl says, "Am I broken?" and she lays it out to her and says, "Why do you think you need fixing when there's nothing broken about you?" And it was an honour to tell a story like that I don't feel has been seen in the media before.
Absolutely. The Sex Education is an incredible, groundbreaking show just to do with its attitudes towards sex in general. And we've got a question here about sex education. Talking about sex is always difficult for us Brits. How important was it in sex education to explore disability and sex on a huge hit show? How was it behind the scenes with the other writers?
Oh, so it was huge, and from the beginning, even before I got the job, in my interviews with the creator, I said, I love series 1, I think it's amazing, and it's so important that it represents different sexualities, but something that was missing from series 1 was disability, and I said if I were to work on series 2, that's something I'd love to bring to it, and I was able to do it. And in the room we created Isaac, who's an amazing character, and he's disabled, but as well as that, he's a prick. Like, he's flawed, and for me that is such an important thing, that disabled people aren't always seen as heroes or victims. They're just like everyone else. And another passion of mine in the show and in my comedy in general is we need to talk about sex, because everyone has sex, right? Just because I'm disabled, it doesn't mean I'm not a human person with sexual desire. So that was huge for me to create a disabled character who has desires just like any other teenager, and I feel that we're getting there, and we're hopefully not far away from being at a point where people look at disabled people and they're not like, oh, they're weird, like they're all just in their own space, not having sex. Spoiler alert, we're all having sex.
I am going to ask one more question before we close this fantastic event. So someone's written, I'm a disabled writer and director, and I run a project called Funny Peculiar, and it's made of disabled women comedians based in the Northeast, writing about cake, sex, whiskey, kids, punk, and disability. Who should we get from the industry to come and talk to us about getting feet, wheels, and crutches, careful, in the door? Like,
well, that's interesting. As a narcissist, I would say me, like, call me up, get in touch with my agent. I'd love to meet you all. I don't know, in terms of getting a foot in the door, it sounds really boring, but like I said, just write and submit to companies. There's loads of brilliant companies that I could tell you about. And in terms of performance, you probably know about it already, but for me, Edinburgh Comedy Festival has always been a huge part of my career. Not this year though.
yeah, unfortunately, Yeah.
But hopefully next year it's somewhere where us creatives can go and put on shows and showcase our talent. So that is somewhere I would recommend going, because usually the TV folks go up there scouting for new exciting talent.
That's all great advice, Rosie. I just want to say a huge thank you for joining us and making this event brilliant and joining us this evening. I just want to say a few things before I go off the line. I'd like to take this time now to thank our sponsors, Arts Council England, Liverpool City Council, Liverpool John Moores University, Institute for Creative Enterprise at Edge Hill University, and Unison Northwest. There is a monitoring form in the comments below, so please fill them in, and your comments help us develop more incredible events like this. There'll also be a donation link. As I said before, all our events are free, but if you are able to donate, our donations will go to Fans Supporting Food Banks, South Liverpool Domestic Abuse Services, and to WOW. A massive thank you to all of you joining us this evening. Please check out the rest of the festival on wowfest.uk. Have a wonderful rest of the evening. Get that last bit of the sun, and please stay safe.